The moon rose blue, and I sensed a shift, not only in the night, but in my own mind. I approached the door, which was neither gray nor blue, and had no other possible color either. I opened the door. A hand, 4-digited and of the hue and texture of unpolished blue jade, darted out and grasped my wrist. The hand was like a vice. It possessed 2 pair of digits, each pair in opposition to the other. There were 2 thumbs. A tall, silent form inched forward. The creature had no face, only a domed head, unfeatured, but for 2 blank white eye patches. The head devolved into the shoulders, the way a bullet fits a cartridge. There was no neck. The trunk was normal, but the waist spread out into a skirt-like fall that ended in a round, fleshy pad on which the entity stood. A shiny, sticky film extruded from the pad, producing locomotion. Like a snail, then, it advanced. I stood firm and waited, unresisting. My real name does not matter, for I was not then in my real body, but in the demi-shell that enables me to traverse the undimensioned spaces as Goblin X, the unknown. My outward form must have appeared as bizarre to this creature from beyond the door as he was to me. To his white eyes, I was a biped, with death-white head and hands. My head is featureless too, except for the single frog-like orb, and my hands possess 3 snaky appendages, each tipped with a small, hard ball. I was dressed in a shagreen tunic and short cloak, with red pants tightly fit and covered with black lines like fringed brushstrokes. Electrum ornaments dotted my tunic, which is gray. As I said, I am Goblin X, the unknown. I was in Tibet, in a cave whose entrance was filling with snow while the wind outside howled, and somewhere a llama played a signaling instrument deeply. The moon outside was blue, and the door whose color defies naming was where the crystal had said it would be. Of the crystal I will not speak, but what I learned from it brought me to Tibet in search of the gateway to a world no literature had named before this. The interlocking hand of the ghostly snail creature withdrew, and I passed beyond the door, which closed of itself. There was no sound, no sensation, although my many senses were attuned by enhancement and habit to register all aspects of dimensional travel. There was none. There was a Mobius road which turned in on itself, like a twisted ribbon. It gave the appearance of going nowhere, but I knew otherwise. I was dragged once around the road, and we sank into its pale surface, one of its surfaces. we emerged in a black space in which a door floated. The door was neither red nor orange, but it was no other possible color either. The snail entity dragged me behind the door, and I saw that, from behind, the door could not be seen, nor did it exist. The entity led me back around and pointed to the door in a gesture that partly commanded, partly implored. I opened my eye to the fullest and peered into its mind. I almost fell in. There were gray-blue clouds, a fog, dust, and age. Inchoate thoughts roiled wordlessly. Confusion, lostness, and one single thought. H-E-L-P. I lidded my eye just in time, and I understood. The creature needed help. But with what? The door clearly led toward the answer. I opened the door and passed through it alone. The snail creature did not follow. I knew he could not follow. I knew he desired to follow, but I did not know why. I only knew that it was not a spell keeping him out. Beyond the door, which rolled shut, was a square room. It was large, with bone walls, and empty of furnishings. I stood facing another blue snail creature. He might have been identical with the one who conducted me to this place, except he stood immobile, as if dead. I opened my eye to its fullest and encountered a black blankness in its mind. Perhaps it was dead. If so, the others were dead too, for there were almost a score of the blue entities, equally motionless. They stood about in various positions, and I wended my way around them, searching their minds. All were empty. I noticed only one thing. These creatures, all indistinguishable from one another, were arrayed in a winding, confused train, as if they had all died or been suspended while following one another about the room. Seeking an exit? Perhaps. But perhaps this was a burial chamber for their dead, or a travel chamber in which its occupants were placed in suspended animation. I could tell nothing. I left the room. When the door had reclosed, the snail creature viced my wrist once more, fearful of being deserted. I peered into its mind again, but there was only chaos. The creature turned its bullet head to me, and I saw nothing in its blank white eyes. It gestured back toward the door. This time it pushed me. I thought of breaking away, but my curiosity was strongly aroused. And curiosity is my most powerful emotion. Perhaps the only one I possess as Goblin X. room had changed. The blue creatures were still there, but so were others. They were all single-orbed entities who looked exactly like myself. They were immobile and arrayed in a chain, each single form distinguished only by a gesture or positioning of limbs. Some of these frozen images were locked in attitudes of examination of the blue entities. I examined them closely and found them to be solid, but I did not understand. This time I left the room at great speed and floated past the blue snail creature, back toward the far door that led back to Tibet. But when I got there, I could not open the door. I was trapped, and I understand that I was trapped in just the same way the blue creature had been trapped until I had opened that door. I had been its only hope. But who was mine? The snail creature was beside me again. This time, he only approached and did not touch me. He knew I understood my plight, our plight. There was an answer here. Perhaps not a solution, but an answer. I set out to discover it. The mind of my fellow prisoner was of no help. Whatever held him also held his mind, except for the single impulse to seek help. I knew that, somehow, I had left behind after images of my examination of that room, just as the snail ghost had. But our images were solid. Thus, they were not merely images. But there was something else. My sensation as I first entered this area of blackness through the first door, or my lack of sensation. I had traveled through many dimensions, and I knew the sensations of each, just as a seasoned earthly sailor knows which sea he is sailing just by its smell. I recognized no sensation, not even analogous. Could this mean something? It must. And as I thought those thoughts, a particular answer came to me. There was but one dimension through which I had never traveled. Time. In all the arcane books I had ever read, it had been written that one could not travel ahead in time any faster than one lived, and that traveling back through time was impossible. The past was gone. One could not return to a time before one's own. Nor to a time one had already passed through. How could an entity meet itself? One does not leave duplicates of oneself behind as one journeys through life and through space, like footprints in dirt. Certainly not living footprints, endlessly reenacting one's past actions. Perhaps the ghostly images could be viewed once more, but their substance is gone forever. A building may exist seemingly unchanged from year to year, or a rock might, but they are changed, and creatures not only change, but move and age and evolve. Yet in the room beyond existed solid but unliving remnants of my past actions within that room, and of the snail of the ghostly movements. I opened that door again and tried to enter. This time I could not. Something barred me, and there was an extra image of myself, exactly where I had stood the second time I had entered that bone-white room. I shut my single eye and left my body. The room did not resist me then. I floated freely, adjusting my vision. The room vibrated. The images vibrated. They possessed some thwarted atomic motion, immobile as they were. I entered the shell of my most recent entrance into the room and took possession of it. I hastily left the room, solid once more. When I had returned to the black outer chamber, my fellow prisoner in time was there. My body was not. I left this body and re-entered the room, claiming another. When I returned in its shell, my previous host was gone. Strange, but I felt normal in the body that I possessed. What would happen if I tried to possess one of the snail creature's frozen after images? I left my host and entered one of the snail ghosts. It was a weird creature to inhabit. I felt heavy and thick, as if composed of organless, tendinous tissues. My brain felt dull, and I slid slowly from the room. When I emerged, the blue snail creature saw me, and I recognized, through eyes like its own, a shocking horror I would not have been able to read had I been in my own body. I never knew what really happened to this creature. There was that blank, mindless expression. And then it suddenly imploded into a blue ball. The ball compressed rapidly and was gone into the blackness. Vanished? Shrunken to subatomic size? Had it ceased to exist? I did not know. Nor did I care, for my own body was likewise gone. No matter. I left my host and traveled back into the frozen time chamber in search of another Goblin X host. There were many to choose from. But they were all gone. The room was devoid of objects. Hastily, I reclaimed my snail-like host. I had no time to consider the cosmic irony of the conceit that I had assumed the identical position of the one who had dragged me into this timeless chamber. When the door leading back to the Tibetan cave slowly opened, I glided toward it. Framed in the opening, I saw the hooded, amber eye of Goblin X, the crimson spider spark dancing deep within it. I was seeing myself as I had first sought to enter the door, that was neither gray nor blue. I reached out with my double set of opposable fingers and caught the wrist nearest to me. Goblin X froze, unresisting. In the dangerous moment, I know not how I knew it was dangerous. When we touched, I left this body and reclaimed my own. Before I could be dragged beyond the door, I spoke the words that brought the black fire of Isrius to consume invisibly the 4-digited hand vicing my wrist. It shriveled and withdrew. As the door closed on me, I saw the snail ghost recede into the blackness, its blank eyes holding some alien light. And then it was gone. I stood in the howling snow under a blue moon slowly whitening as if in death, and there was only one cold thought in my brain. Whose soul had possessed the snail ghost?